Ladies and gentlemen, let us begin. Right. So today, first of all, people in the back, can you hear me? Loud and clear? Okay. So today I'm going to be talking about gender and gender identity and giving you a little bit of basic information. These are things that are generally not discussed frequently within Japanese society or Japanese culture comfortably. And hopefully some of the information that you get will be new information and maybe change your perspective or open your mind to other alternatives that are out there when we talk about gender and when we talk about identity. But first, I'd like to start by pointing out two pictures. And I have this awesome pointer. Ha! So, we've got a bunch of people up here, but what you can notice is there's two symbols that are built into the images, the kind of male and female images. So, this symbol, or actually, let's go with this one. You see the blue circle with the cross at the bottom. Have you seen this symbol before? What does it mean? Okay, this is the symbol for female or woman. Okay, and this is the symbol for man, male. So this is something that's specifically related to Western culture, that if you've never looked at these, if you've never seen them in a particular context, you don't know what they mean necessarily. In Japan, you have kanji for male, female, or josei or dansei. You already have symbols for these words. But this symbol, the symbol for female, this originates from Roman symbols for the planets and the Roman gods and goddesses. So this is the symbol of female. This is also the symbol for the planet Venus. Venus is the Roman goddess of love and is a woman. Her Greek counterpart is Aphrodite. So when you see this symbol, it means woman, but it's a direct reference back to ancient Roman mythology. This symbol is the symbol for male, and this is a direct reference back as well to Mars. So the planet Mars is represented with this symbol. And this is connected with, Mars is the Roman god of war, or in the Greek counterpart, it would be Ares, the god of war. So goddess of love, god of war. So you can see between those two, there's a very clear distinction between the male and female and characteristics that go with it. Women are connected and associated with love. Men are connected and associated with war. So that's what those two symbols mean. And as we go through the lecture, you're going to be introduced to other genders and other symbolisms, and you'll start to see what these other things represent. Okay? But first, I'd like you to think about yourself and think about the context of Japan and kind of what the ideal man and what the ideal woman are in Japan. So if you look on your worksheet, you've got two boxes. I'd like you to take a moment. You can do this by yourself or you can do it with a partner as well. But think about and write down some notes. Describe the ideal Japanese man and describe the ideal Japanese woman. And be specific. What do they look like? What does their physical appearance look like? What abilities do they have? Are they good at some things? Are they less good at other things? Also, what is their personality like? Are there personality traits or characteristics that are good for one, but maybe not for the other? How do they dress? What does the ideal Japanese man look like? What does the ideal Japanese woman look like? Take a couple minutes, talk with each other, write some notes in your box. on description, avoid giving examples of people. Just shout out, what are some qualities of the ideal Japanese man? Modest. Okay. So this is a personality trait. Tall. Okay. A physical trait. Never cries, okay? Does not show emotion like that, okay? Shy, okay? What about dress? Suits, pants, okay? All right. What about abilities? What abilities does the ideal Japanese man have? Good at sports, okay? Decisive. Ooh, okay. Takes charge. Makes decisions. Okay? How about the ideal Japanese woman? What does the ideal Japanese woman look like? There's a lot of women in the room. Shout out some ideals about looks, abilities, personality. Reserved, okay? So reserved and quiet, all right? Kind, okay? So is nice to other people, is considerate of other people, okay? Good at housework. Not one I did. So, good at housework. Okay, so that's an ability. What about looks or dress? Wears skirts. Okay. Kimono. Maybe wears kimono. Kind of has a traditional cultural element. Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of images. I'm not sure if this is accurate as your image of the ideal Japanese man or woman. This is what I came up with, but I'm also not very connected with pop culture. So if this is completely different from your opinion, I apologize. But this is my image. So we've got AKB and Arashi, two groups. So if you're describing these people, we've got some certain characteristics. Maybe with the women, they look like they might be kind. Possibly they look modest, depending on how they're dressing. The men are all in suits. They're on the phone. They look like they're making decisions. Very decisive. Or maybe they're calling their agent. Book another concert. We want more money. Who knows? But, so we have these certain terms and we have these certain ideas in mind when we talk about the ideal man or the ideal woman. So when you think of man, woman, certain things pop into your head, right? So here's another question that I'd like you to think about. We've got some images, you came up with characteristics and you described these. The description, the characteristics that you wrote down in the boxes, is there someone that you know that matches what you described? Can you think of a real person specifically that matches all of the things you wrote down in that box? More importantly, do you match the description that you just gave for your own ideal person? Are you a description of the ideal Japanese man, or are you the description of the ideal Japanese woman? Take a moment, check in with the person next to you. If you're not comfortable, lie. If you don't match, what's different? I'm going to give you another question to discuss. How do you feel about being held to the ideal standards that you described? Reflecting on your description of the ideals and whether or not you meet them. But the point that I'm trying to make is we live in a world that creates ideals. We live in a world that creates a sense of what we should be like or should not be like. And some of the most strong structures, some of the strongest structures that we have about what we should do, how we should live, what we should look like, how we should act or behave, all of those come into play in gender. And because gender and sexuality is something that's very, very ingrained into culture and society. So we're going to look at how we respond to that and the different ways that people choose to identify themselves in terms of gender. So I asked you this question, how do you feel about being held to the description of the ideal that you were describing earlier? So the questions that I'd like you to think about, I'm not going to ask you to discuss these, but I want you to think about this, is here, do you want to meet those expectations? You described an ideal of your gender. Do you want to be like that? Is that the kind of person that you want to be? Do you want to look like that? Do you want to act like that? Do you want to dress like that? Or possess those abilities? So none of us is perfect, right? No one can be perfect. But there are some things that we can choose to do, some things we can choose not to do. So we have these 2-second questions, or these 2 questions at the bottom. What parts do you care about related to that ideal? Which things do you not care about? So let's use me as an example, and then I'll give you a brief moment to think. So let's look at the gender ideal for women I would say the gender ideal for women in the United States is different from that in Japanese, but not so much. So I'm going to apply the Japanese gender ideal for now to me. So what are things that I do that conform to my gender, that fit? Yes, there's a wedding photo. I know. Everyone's like, ah! But what are the things that I do that match who I am? So I am a woman. What is expected of me? What sort of characteristics or traits that match the ideal do I possess? We've got 4 pictures. 1, I love shopping. I love to go shopping. I love to spend way too much money on things I don't need because they're cute. My favorite store in Japan because it's one of the only stores that has Western sizes. So I know they will fit me. I am too tall for Japan. So I like to shop. I enjoy cooking. I don't always have a lot of time to cook, but when I do, I really enjoy it. I am married. So as a woman, there's a social expectation that I should be married. I shouldn't be single. I should be married and to a man. So there's a picture. In case you're curious, that is a Shinto shrine, but it is in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. It is not in Japan. And another thing that conforms to my particular gender is shoes. I love shoes. My husband hates my entire shoe collection, our entire Genkan, the whole shelf, the cabinet. It's basically all mine. He has like 3 pairs of shoes. So, but these are all things that you expect of women, right? These fit kind of the ideal or the image that you have of women. Now, these are things that I've chosen to follow. I'm aware of what's expected of me. I'm aware of the ideal of what the ideal woman looks like. These things I've decided I want to follow. This fits my identity. But there's quite a bit about me that does not fit as well. Let's take a look at what doesn't fit the gender ideal. First of all, I love fixing things from a very young age. When I was 6 years old, my dad gave me a toolbox. And so when he would fix the car, I would go out, I would hold the flashlight, and I would help him fix the car. I would build things. I'm also, my dad used to take me to the gun range, so I know how to shoot guns and use weapons. These are things that are not associated with the female ideal, right? Also, I don't wear makeup. No one ever showed me how to put on makeup. I don't wear it. If I put on mascara, I poke my eye out, so I gave up. But this is something that's generally an expectation of women, especially in Japan. Women do not wear makeup in this country. Sometimes when students come in the morning, I would not recognize certain girls because they wouldn't have their makeup on. I'm like, who are you? It's like a completely different person. But this is, again, something that does not fit my gender's ideal image. Another thing is money. I make more money than my husband. It's awesome. That means I can go shopping whenever I want to, right? So in our relationship, my husband works part-time and he does a lot of volunteer work. I work full-time. I am the main wage earner in our family. And thus far, we've pretty much decided we're probably not going to have children, but we're not sure. So for me, my career is more important than having children. That also does not fit the typical gender ideal, right? So each one of us, each one of you has some things that you are willing to do that fit your gender's ideal, but there's other things that you're like, I don't care. I hate wearing skirts. I'm just going to wear pants. Or, it's kind of cool when I wear a skirt in summer. Maybe I'll wear a skirt. You never know. So there's different things that we all choose to do. All right, so now, might be a little bit small. I'll give you a few minutes to do this, but on your worksheet, you have space for 12 answers. I'd like you to look at these 12 questions up here on the board to help you think about your gender and your gender identity. As I said before, none of us is perfect. There are some things that we choose to match to our ideal and some that we choose not to. You described the ideal earlier. Now let's see how close you are to the ideal and the expectations. So there's 12 questions. There's an A and a B. Please choose one answer for each one and write it down on your worksheet. If it's too small, feel free to.
It's too small.
It's too small. Okay. Shall I read it for you?
Yes.
Okay. So, number one, how do you feel when people talk about their feelings? A, connected. B, uncomfortable. Choose one. Connected to people in terms of you understand their feelings and they understand yours. So you feel an emotional connection. Okay. Question 2. What's your shopping style? A, I like to take my time and enjoy the experience. B, I try to get it done as quickly as possible and get out. Okay. 3. Number 3, are you naturally good at math? A, yes. B, no. 4. 3. Are you naturally good at math? A is yes, B is no. Okay. Number 4. Do you give people compliments? So do you say nice things about people? A, not really. B, yes, it comes naturally to me. Okay. Number 5. What would you rather know about somebody that you just met for the first time? A, what their job is, or B, if they have any children. Number 6, how easy is it for you to tell how a person is feeling by looking at their face? A, easy. B, difficult. So, can you understand a person's feelings by looking at their face? Okay. Everyone in the back, okay so far? All right. Number 7. What do you do when you have a problem? A, ask for other people's input or advice. B, solve it myself. So do you talk to other people or do you just keep it to yourself? Number 8. What's more important to you during arguments when you're fighting? A, coming to an understanding where everyone understands each other. Or B, getting my point across. Number 9, what would you do if a friend was asking, first period. What would you do if a friend was acting strange? A, ask for an explanation. B, try to read between the lines. What that means is try to figure out what's going on without asking. So, do you ask or do you guess? Number 10. Do you tend to notice when people have poor or bad manners? A, yes. B, no. Do you notice when the junior high school student sits in the special seats sleeping with their cell phone on when there's an old woman on crutches standing in front of them? Number 11. What do you talk about most with your friends? A, what's going on in our lives, what's going on in everyday, each person's life. Or B, business, politics, sports, or news. And then number 12, which do you prefer to read? Nonfiction or fiction? Okay. So, is everyone okay, or do I need to repeat? Okay. All right. So you have an answer for each one. Now I'm going to show you some points. So I know, again, this is kind of small, but take a look. Depending on your answer, you got either 1 point or 2 points. I'd like you to total up your score. So for number 1, if you answered A, give yourself 1 point. B, 2 points. Number 2, A is 1 point, B is 2 points. Number 3, A is 2 points, B is 1 point. Number 4, A is 2, B is 1. Number 5, A is 2, B is 1. Number 6, A is 1, B is 2. Number 7, A is 2, B is 1. Number 8, A is 2, B is 1. Number 9, A is 1, B is 2. Number 10, A is 1, B is 2. Number 11, A is 1, B is 2. And number 12, A is 2, B is 1. Please add up your scores. Have you got your numbers? Who has 12 points? Does anyone have 12? What about 15? Okay. What about 18? 18, okay. 20? 20? 24? Okay. So, let me give you the breakdown. Okay. So it's unlikely anyone got under 12 because there's 12 questions. So again, based on your answers, you might be leaning towards one gender more than the other. So this gives you a sense of how you compare to the ideal that you were describing earlier. Okay? So like I said, we don't all fit everything in an ideal. Nobody's perfect. Okay? So let's go a little bit deeper into this kind of topic. In order to do that, you need to know what 3 specific words are. Sex, gender, and sexual orientation. So take a moment. What's the difference between these 3? Do not look it up in a dictionary or on the phone or anything. Take a minute with someone next to you. What do you think the difference is between these 3 words? If there's anything that you are uncomfortable talking about, feel free to skip it. This is a sensitive issue for some people. So, let's see what you have. Can anyone shout out, what do you think the definition is of sex? Anyone want to guess? No. Biological difference, okay? All right. What about gender? What's gender? Social or cultural difference, okay? Sexual orientation? Everyone's like, no, nope, don't know that one. All right, so there is a key difference between these three. I'm going to introduce each one briefly and give you some examples and explain it in a little more detail. So those of you who guessed, you guys are pretty close. Well done. Go you. So first, let's look at sex. Okay. And no, we're not talking about like people doing things. This is just sex in terms of the body. So sex, here's the definition according to the American Psychological Association. Sex refers to a person's biological status. So it's biology. And is typically categorized as male or female in a binary set. Binary, bi means two. A binary set means one or another. You are either male or female. There are some instances where people's sex is a mix of the two. For in terms of sometimes people are born with kind of different biological outcomes, but by and large, most people are categorized as either male or female. Okay? So, what does this look like? So, what this means is sex chromosomes. So, inside your body, the cells, you have chromosomes, X's or Y's. If you have X and Y, you're male. If you have XX, you're female. So, we have a biological evidence of the sex. Same thing in terms of genitalia and organs. A male has different stuff from a female. Okay? So this is purely a biological or scientific concept. Okay? So this one, pretty easy to sort of understand. But now I'm going to ask you a question here, since we have male and female. Which color is male? Which color is female? Okay, so blue one is for males, red one is for females. Wrong! Good try though, it's a trick question. So, sexes do not have colors. Because, as I said, sex is a biological status. It's a scientific term, scientific description. In this case, science does not have colors. Okay? We're not looking at a rainbow or something. Gender has colors. Gender is different from sex because gender is expectations and beliefs. And so we would call these feminine and masculine, not male and female, because something that is red maybe has feminine or female-like characteristics, tendencies, and something that's masculine has qualities that we would associate with males. Okay? So, here's some words that I came up with related to the concepts of masculine and feminine. Now this is connected to gender, not sex, gender. So, if we are describing someone as feminine, we might talk about their beauty, we might describe them as emotional, caring, maternal, so they want to take care of people, nurturing, sensitive, maybe even the word sexy. So these are words that we associate with feminine, femininity. Masculinity, here's some words that come up. Power, toughness, manly, not me. Strength, courage, honor, violence. So these are words that get associated with either masculine or feminine. Can you think of any other words that you would associate with masculine or feminine? I'll give you 1 minute. Think back to those ideals that you had at the beginning. Any ideas? Are there any other words that you can think of? What about cute? Where does that go? What about cuddly? Cool. So there is a little bit of a tendency, there's other things that you can think of that have a binary, a split between one or the other. Okay? So it may not be easy at first to think of these. Once you start to notice things in society, then it becomes clearer. Ah, this is part of a feminine description. Ah, this is part of a masculine description. So let's talk a little bit more about gender itself. So a definition of gender is up here. Gender refers to attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates or connects with a person's biological sex. So it is culturally defined. Gender is culturally defined. There are certain expectations of a person, but these expectations are based on that person's sex. So if your sex is female, you are expected to wear pink. You are expected to be kawaii, cute, or something like that. If your sex is male, there's an expectation you might be strong, or you might be tough, something like that. So the primary difference, just as the two students guessed, sex is biological only, gender is socially and culturally constructed. What that means is it can be different from culture to culture as well. So this whole term has been a discussion about kind of relative differences between cultures. If we think about Varna, the tendency to evaluate, assumption of similarities, all of those things that we think about with cultural difference can also be applied to gender. The expectations of a female in Japanese culture is probably different from the social expectations of a female in South African culture or in Afghani culture. Right? So some things are culturally specific. And if someone is expressing behavior that matches what that culture expects, so if you are acting the way the culture says you are supposed to act, then we say that you are gender normative. Normative meaning normal, the norm. Okay? Behavior that does not match the cultural expectations is gender nonconformity. So conform means match. Everyone does the same thing. Nonconformity, not matching what is expected. Okay? So again, as I said, gender, culturally, socially constructed. Facebook has tried to reflect this as much as possible. And there are a variety of options available when you select your gender on Facebook. These are all showing up on the screen right now. Transgender woman, gender fluid, androgynous, agender, cis female, genderqueer, two-spirit, FTM, female to male, MTF, male to female. There are 58 different gender identities listed on Facebook. So when you select what you are, what your gender is, you've got many options. Why are there so many different options? Because it's culturally constructed, socially constructed, and each one of us, just like we have a different perspective about culture, we might have a different perspective about gender. Right? What the ideal looks like to you could be different from me. So if we're talking about gender, what is normal, what is not normal? How do we react? So what happens when people don't conform to the gender norms of their culture? Got 4 pictures up here. Who are the men? Who are the women? Discuss. What do you think? Man, woman? We don't know. We're not answering. Man, woman? Any guesses? Oh, you guys are too smart. You're like, nope, we can tell. This is a trick question. You're not answering. So, this is a man in drag, dressed as a woman. This is a man, dressed as a man, with a silly hat. This is a woman. She's dressed a little bit like a tomboy, so maybe not in your kind of typical feminine-looking clothing. This is a man. This is a woman in drag. person. This is the same person. This is my friend Scott. This is my friend Kelly. So, Scott is a professional drag queen. So his job is dressing up in drag. And Kelly is not a standard drag king, but she does enjoy dressing up every now and then. She likes to keep her hair short, so it works out. So, going back to this question, what happens when people don't conform to gender norms? How do people feel when they see Scott dressed like this? Or when they see Kelly dressed like this? Some people might be a little bit uncomfortable. Some people might be like, ha ha, that's ridiculous. Other people are like, ah, I wish I could do that. Or, I feel the same way, but maybe I can't show it. So gender nonconformity and kind of how you dress or how you present yourself can really cause problems for people who are not expecting it. If you are thinking only in binary, male looks like, male, female, feminine looks like this, masculine looks like this, you look at this and you're like, what? And you get confused. So, why am I putting this up here? To point out there is more than just a binary. Here's some other pictures of my friend Scott. Pretty awesome. I thought the umbrella was a nice touch. So, this is Scott. That's Scott here as well. Okay? So you can see that he puts a lot of effort into hiding his sex and appearing to be a different gender. So he's matching the societal expectations, the cultural expectations of femininity, being feminine, but his sex is not the same as the gender. Okay? Here's another example. If you look, if anyone pays attention to Eurovision, so we have American Idol that's very popular in the United States. There's another thing that's similar to it in Europe called Eurovision. And this performer is named Conchita Wurst, and she recently won Eurovision. So she was the winner of the singing contest, but she is a drag queen. So you can see she's also challenging gender norms and gender expectations. This person's sex is male, but gender is female. Okay? I have to say, I'm jealous of the hair. Wish I had hair that nice. But you can see, again, you see this, and you're a little bit uncomfortable. Not necessarily because you think it's bad or good, but you're not used to seeing this. This doesn't match your expectations, right? A beautiful dress and a beard, oh, unusual. Okay? So that's gender. Now let's look at the last term, sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is referring to the sex of the person that you are sexually or romantically attracted to. Again, this is not gender, this is about sex. So, if you are attracted to the opposite sex, then you are heterosexual. Hetero means different sex. If you are attracted to the same sex, homo means same, homosexual. If you are attracted to both, then you are considered bisexual in your sexual orientation. And there are some people who are not sexually attracted to anyone. And so we call them asexual. Okay? So these are some of them. There are a few more sexual orientations because of the genders that I was describing. We have the 58 different varieties of gender available. Some people say, as a result, there are other sexual orientations. I'm just going to stick to the 4 most common. Right? So, a couple pictures just to show that people are out there So I was talking about my friend Kelly and my friend Scott. I've known Kelly since 5th grade in elementary school. She and her wife Angela live in New York, and they have 3 children. So biologically, Lexi is Angela's daughter. Biologically, Edward and Benjamin are Kelly's sons. But they are family, so we have a perfect example of a functional family that does not match necessarily society's expectations. But still here, still perfectly normal, they're wonderful people. All right? Same thing, Scott and Roger. Scott looks completely different, doesn't he? Without the hair. But this is a picture from their wedding back in 2009. So again, they're able to marry, they're all able to live, within society, but they don't necessarily match the gender expectations. They are married, but they're not married to the opposite sex. So lots of examples of things that do not fit the binary expectations that we have related to gender. Other things that come up are the term LGBTQ. So maybe you've heard these terms before, maybe you haven't. L stands for lesbian, so that's 2 women who are attracted to each other. Gay is used for men who are attracted to each other. Bisexual, as I said, attracted to both sexes. T is for transgender, and you have one example on the top center. There is a celebrity in the United States, the singer Cher. Cher had a daughter. Her name was Chastity. Chastity decided she wanted to change her sex because she felt that while her sex was a woman, she felt her gender was male. So she underwent surgery, so she's considered transgender, and she changed her name. So this is Chastity before the surgery, and this is Chaz, who's now transgender, but the sex of this person is now male, not female. All right? And Q stands for queer. Queer used to be a term that would refer to homosexuals. Now it's much more commonly associated with no gender. If you are gender queer, you haven't decided what your gender is, or you don't believe in gender. Maybe on Monday you're feeling feminine, on Tuesday you're feeling masculine. So gender queer means fluid, or you don't know. And here's another great example. Who's the man? Who's the woman? It's not so easy to tell. So these things will kind of challenge your expectations of that binary of gender. All right. Got 2 characters. I'll give you just 1 minute because we're almost out of time. Do these characters have genders? If so, if you decide one of these is masculine, or one of these is feminine, which one is which and why? Do you know their names? This is Wally, and this is Eve. So I would make the case that these 2 characters don't really have specific genders attached to them. I mean, first of all, they're robots. Do robots have gender? Great question. But I would say that we can't know for sure, but you may have naturally felt and kind of naturally said, well, I think this one's more masculine, maybe this one's more feminine. Why? Because we have a natural tendency, because of societal and cultural expectation, to create a binary. We see something, say, what is it? Masculine, feminine? What are the expectations? You see something that's sleek, smooth, pretty looking, maybe that's feminine. We see something that's dirty and sort of rough and tumble because it's been doing work, maybe that's more masculine. So I'm putting this up here to tell you that the binary, the cultural expectations are everywhere, even where you don't think they might be. So be aware of what you're looking at. So what I'll just kind of close with is the idea that, remember, in society, gender is everywhere. We naturally want to assign it because we naturally want to categorize. If you think back to the Gould reading, Blumenbach talks about, we have to categorize things. We must put things into columns and explain them. It's a natural tendency that we have. But we tend to think of gender as a binary. Don't. It's not. Sex is binary. Gender is not. As you saw from Facebook. So please keep that in mind. And last thing in closing, what's the point of why I'm saying all this? Well, to go back to the other readings that we've looked at all semester, don't assume similarities. Don't assume that gender norms in one culture apply in another. As of last week, 30 of the 50 US states now allow gay people to get married. The cultural norm is shifting. It's clearly not the same as in Japan, where that's not legalized. Avoid the tendency to evaluate, just as you do with culture, same thing with gender. Remain open-minded to other possibilities. There are 58 gender options on Facebook. For all you know, all 58 could be sitting in this room right now. You don't know. And please be free to feel whatever you feel you should be. You might fit within the gender expectations of your culture. You might not. It's okay. It's your identity. You ultimately define your own self. So don't let society's expectations control who you are. The end. I know you're like, oh, she stopped talking finally. All right, so that's everything. Now we're going to start the quiz.